Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, crafting kitchens that encourage connection and creativity. Details at callmosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. 1 month ago, St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones lost her reelection bid to then Alderwoman Kara Spencer. It wasn't close. Spencer won by nearly 30 points. Prior to becoming the city's chief executive, Jones was a Democratic committeewoman, state representative, and the city treasurer. She served 4 years as mayor. A bit later, we'll talk with STLPR's Rachel Lippmann about Jones's time as mayor. But first, let's listen to the interview that Rachel and St. Louis Public Radio's politics correspondent Jason Rosenbaum did with Mayor Jones. Here's Rachel.
It's the first time in more than 20 years that you're not serving in some kind of elected role. And I'm wondering what that transition to quote-unquote civilian life has been like.
It's been quite liberating. And it's been interesting not having to have an opinion on everything that happens on either level, the state, local, or national level. Now, I can just pay attention if I want to or tune it all out if I want to.
What are some of the things, though, that you miss about serving in an elected official's role?
I do miss not driving, but I also miss the people I worked with the most and seeing them every day and interacting with them every day, finding out about what's going on with their home lives. We still keep in contact, though, and get together every once in a while, but I miss them terribly.
You were able to serve as mayor for 4 years, and I'm wondering what you think the biggest thing was that there just wasn't enough time to do in those 4 years.
The biggest thing that we weren't able to do in those 4 years was the Monarch facility on MLK. That was a project I was really, really passionate about because I saw the potential for that project to really change the landscape of Martin Luther King Drive and really change the landscape of the neighborhoods that surrounded that facility. It was going to be a workforce development. Our workforce development agency was going there, Office of Violence Prevention, Economic Empowerment Center, as well as LRA and some companies that will be co-located. Some companies we were able to recruit to actually start their businesses there.
And have you heard about what the fate of the Monarch may be?
I have not heard because, as I talked about earlier, I'm just tuning a lot of things out at the moment.
What did you remember as sort of your biggest or proudest moment as you were serving as mayor of the city?
Oh, there are too many to name, but I would say the thing that I am most proud of is our progress on public safety because it is an all hands on deck strategy and how we were able to not only make progress there, but expand that progress to the rest of the region through the Save Lives Now initiative. Because as Chief Tracy always says, an informed public is a safer public. And also being able to bring Chief Tracy here as the first outside chief in our entire city's history and see the progress that he has made with the police department to really transform that department and make it better than it already was.
Do you think that you were given enough credit for the things you were able to accomplish as mayor from the residents?
Absolutely not. But I did take a lot of the blame for the things that weren't my problem. And that's inherent within the job, right? There are people who don't really understand and still don't understand what the mayor is responsible for, what she has power over to control, and how government works. And I believe that there is a level of education that has to be done here because we have so much information at our fingertips, but yet we still don't know the basics about how local government works. And a lot of times I found myself just trying to explain, like, no, I'm not responsible for this, or yes, I am, but these things take time.
In the areas that you as the mayor were responsible for, what is the biggest regret that you have about something you either didn't get done or you realized, I maybe should or should not have approached that problem from this angle?
So I don't want my activist friends to be angry with me, but paid family leave is more difficult in practice than it is in theory. And we learned that lesson as we implemented paid family leave within the city. I still support it wholeheartedly. However, we didn't put the types of guardrails that should have been there to make sure that we have implemented it effectively so people didn't take advantage of it. We found that there were a couple hundred of employees taking advantage of paid family leave to stay out of their jobs when they could have been working. So that was one regret. And then I would say that we didn't push hard enough to do things a little faster, not realizing that I would only have 4 years to get some things done, but just pushing a little faster on some key issues and policies.
You've talked about some of the best moments that you've had, and I'm wondering what were the moments that you would never want to live again as mayor of the city?
Oh, the moments I would never want to live again are the moments where I spent with families that lost loved ones to gun violence, and then my family losing 4 members of our family to gun violence during my 4 years as mayor. Those New Year's Eve vigils are quite touching and tear-jerking. And I would continue to do them, obviously, but they're just hard. Those are hard moments to look a family in the eye, and there's nothing you can do.
What do you think the results of both your race in 2025 and then the first congressional district race in 2024 say about the strength or the place of the progressive political movement in the St. Louis area?
I would say that there is a reckoning that needs to happen, especially when it comes to the leadership of Black women in the Democratic Party and in the progressive movement. They want our votes, but they don't want our leadership. And we need to have a serious conversation and a hard conversation as to why. 92% of African American women voted for Kamala Harris in 2024, but yet we saw not only with my race, but several races around the country where we were losing Black leadership at the local level. In that same cycle, we lost Sharon Weston Broome in Baton Rouge. We lost London Breed in San Francisco. We're about to lose LaToya Cantrell in New Orleans, who had to experience many recall efforts to get her out of office. So there is a huge disconnect within the party about our vote versus our leadership.
And what would you want to see the St. Louis City Central Democratic Committee, the Missouri Democratic Party? I mean, what do you want them to do? What do you hope that these conversations lead to?
I don't know, honestly, because I don't know where the disconnect lies. And so hopefully, they have those conversations amongst themselves, because I'm going to go off and do what I need to do to provide for my family. And I'm going to take a break from politics for a little while.
So several people pointed out to me that with your loss, the 3 people that were at the Arch in 2020, you, Cori Bush, and Kim Gardner, are no longer in office for different reasons. Kim Gardner didn't lose an election. She resigned.
Right.
But I think people saw that as like the high point in St. Louis for Black political power for Black women. And all those people have been replaced by people who are not Black women. And Darlene Green lost as well. Is there a broader message here beyond what you just said, specifically to St. Louis, that you had something in 2020 that's not there anymore?
I think St. Louis needs to have a conversation with itself of why it no longer trusts Black women to lead. And I can't answer that for them. But there is, I would say, an unhealthy and unrealistic level of expectations when it comes to Black female leadership, not only in St. Louis, but, when we look across the country. My dad always told me, and then it's an old phrase that Black women have to work twice as hard just to get half as much. Well, I feel like we work 5 times as hard to get nothing in return. And so, that's a serious conversation that I think that not only we need to have locally, but nationally as well.
So Rachel described you as part of the progressive political movement and the political faction in St. Louis. What are some issue positions and political values that define this entire political group?
I would say, paid family leave, women's reproductive rights, minimum wage, tenants' rights, protecting the unhoused, access to affordable housing, just to name, a few off the top of my head.
I asked because, I guess maybe 20 years ago when, Mayor Slay was in office, I don't think he was against all those things, but he was seen as, more moderate to conservative on a lot of those issues. And when I look at you and now Mayor Spencer, I see obviously maybe different focuses, but I don't really see a lot of the same issue differences. So was the race between you and current Mayor Spencer just a battle between two progressive-y people, or do you think that she's in a distinctly different faction than you?
No, I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The biggest difference between me and Kara Spencer is that she's white and I'm black. A friend of mine who also just lost his reelection, Mayor Chokwe Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi, once told me that being a black mayor in this country is a balancing act between white fear and black expectations. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially what we saw in this race, this most recent race. Even though I brought crime down to historic levels that we hadn't seen in decades, what was the sentiment? We don't feel safe, whatever that means. But the data clearly said that crime was at its lowest level in decades. And that's what the people wanted back in 2021. They were talking about crime. Well, we decreased crime, and then they moved the goalposts to something else, to potholes and trash and snow removal, not realizing that, or having some level of amnesia about snow removal and how we do it in the city of St. Louis. So, I would say that we have to talk about the elephant in the room.
So going back to 2021, you won because you got huge margins in North City and just some of the Central Corridor wards, which are majority black. Mm-hmm. And then you won a lot of wards in Southeast and, South Central. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the ward maps are different now, mm-hmm. but let's start with the white wards in particular that you lost support in. Why do you think that you didn't do as well in those particular parts?
Even when I had conversations, or my team had conversations with the white voters in South St. Louis, they could not give us a reason why they didn't like me or were voting for Mayor Spencer. And if you can't give me a reason or for something that I have particularly done, then the only default is race. And then let's go to North St. Louis.
Yes, that was going to be my next question.
Right.
And we could continue.
So we're dealing with white fear, and then let's go to North St. Louis, for example. Black expectations. We had African Americans whose neighborhoods had not been touched in decades and have been neglected for decades. And I announced, and I still believe this, that we have to rebuild North St. Louis in order for all of St. Louis to succeed. But there's no patience there. The expectations there are so high to deliver immediately to address the decades of neglect in 4 years, which is impossible.
Is that why you think that Spencer got between 30 and 40% in black majority wards?
Yes, absolutely, because they ran out. There's patience and expectations. And I heard it myself. And every town hall meeting we had, we talked about the progress that we were making, and there were several constituents who would always say, well, that's not fast enough. You're not doing it on my street. I don't see what you're doing in my neighborhood. Well, North St. Louis is 30 plus square miles of our entire city, and you're not gonna be able to see that kind of change overnight.
Do you see, you just mentioned, and Rachel will kind of dig into this point, you're taking a break from politics right now. So there probably are going to be people who still believe in what you believe and still want to carry out your vision in the future. Are there any people that you see in the horizon that could fill the void from you or Cori Bush, basically?
No.
No? Why not?
I just don't.
can you elaborate why? Or no,
I
you're just
can't.
not.
I can't elaborate. No, I don't see anyone that can fill the void left by myself or Congresswoman Bush.
What is missing from the people whose names may pop up?
Consistency is missing from the people who are still remaining in public office. I was always taught when I got into this, you dance with the person who brought you to the dance. Your word is your bond. That's the only thing you have worth value in this world. And so, when people flip-flop, they tell you they're going to vote one way and then they vote another way, or they tell you they're going to be with you and then they don't, or some of the other things that we've seen happen. I don't play like that. If I tell you I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. If I tell you I'm going to vote a certain way, I'm going to do it. If I tell you I'm going to follow up, I'm going to follow up, because your word is your bond. Is the only thing that's worth any value in this world.
So I know that you and Mayor Spencer were able to have some conversations during that very short week-long transition period. What were those conversations like? What kind of advice were you providing to the incoming mayor?
We told her, we meaning myself and my team, we told her that our team members were going to provide memos of what they were working on, in transition, and the cabinet would do the same. I gave her a tour of the office, and the whole meeting lasted maybe 20, 25 minutes.
Is there other additional advice as you watch the first couple of weeks of the administration that you want to offer up now?
No. This is the government that St. Louis voted for or didn't vote for. 75% didn't vote for. And
that means just overall they didn't vote, period. Not
right.
75% did not vote for Mayor Spencer.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't vote for either one of us, right? They didn't vote at all. And so, this is her time to lead. And so I'm going to step out of the way and let her lead.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned that you're staying out of politics for now. What is next for Tishaura Jones?
I'm looking at a few different avenues, looking at consulting, working with other cities, looking at, consulting with other companies, looking at, possibly writing a book, maybe starting a podcast. And I've actually I'm almost finished with my children's book that I was writing while I was in office, but obviously I couldn't finish it. So now I have time to go back to that project. It's a cute little book that's inspired by my mother. And then, being a mom. My son is 17 now. He's gonna be going off to college in a year, and making sure that transition is as smooth as possible for him.
That's former St. Louis Mayor Tishaura Jones talking with STLPR's Jason Rosenbaum and Rachel Lippmann. Jones lost her reelection bid to now Mayor Kara Spencer last month. And with us live in the studio is Rachel with some analysis. Rachel, welcome back.
Always good to be here, Elaine.
So what is your overall reaction to what Tishaura Jones had to say? And to me, too, she sounded much more relaxed than in other times she's been on the show.
Well, I think it is interesting. I was at Mayor Spencer's election night party, so I, saw the reaction of a victor. But Jason Rosenbaum, who was at Mayor Jones's party, said even though they knew it was a brutal loss, a wide margin loss, they were still out celebrating and dancing. And I think there is a feeling of none of this is now my problem. Mm-hmm. No, we were not able to accomplish what we wanted to. We were not able to reach our goals. And it is certainly disappointing for her that I think she didn't earn the chance to continue with her mission, investing in the North Side, rooting progressive policies in the city of St. Louis. But I think there is a relief when it is no longer your responsibility. Mm-hmm. With great power of being the mayor does come with everything, as she mentioned, is your fault, even the things that you are not responsible for.
Right. Now, Jason asked Jones if there are any people that she sees on the horizon who can fill the void left by her no longer being the mayor and Cori Bush. And Jones said no. You followed up by asking what is missing. Jones said consistency and people going against their word. What is your read of that?
I think there are some very specific scenarios in which she is thinking we have negotiated deals. Again, we didn't follow up on this. I would lean towards this is about the way that the Rams money was being spent and deals that had been struck to say this is how the money from the St. Louis Rams settlement will be allocated, and changes that got made on the floor and in committee to that bill that went against what was a deal that had been negotiated, where the mayor's office and the Board of Aldermen, led by Pam Boyd and Alicia Saunier, had said this is an agreement that we will come to, and it got derailed. That, and there may be other things that she is thinking of privately, with private conversations that she has had with people where they give her their word and say, we will vote this way, you have our support, and then turn around and do something different. And it may even be individuals in Jefferson City that we're not thinking of.
Now, speaking of words, Jones said she spent 20 to 25 minutes showing now St. Louis Mayor Kara Spencer on The Office, and that contest between Spencer and Jones got quite spicy.
That is one word for it, yes.
What do you make of the transition?
I mean, I think any time that there is a transition between political office where the two opponents are spicy, as you said, it can be an awkward situation. And you also have to remember that the city of St. Louis's transition period is just particularly short because that is how the charter has arranged it. And in a part of the interview that didn't get on, she talked about trying to make that transition longer, give the new mayor more chance to get into the office. It wasn't something that was able to get over the line. But when you're combining an incredibly short transition period with a spicy race, it doesn't surprise me that there was that kind of much tension and short in the room.
Rachel Lippmann is STLPR City Politics and Justice reporter. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always.
Today's episode was produced by our executive producer, Alex Hoyer.
Audio engineering by Aaron Dorr.
And by Rachel Lippmann.
This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.